You guys sound good.
This week on the Elevation Nation podcast, we have on a man who knows his way around the District of Columbia. We're going to talk all about his life, the legacy that his family has bestowed upon him, and how he's building his own legacy here in Washington, D.C. The one, the only, Matt McPartlin is joining the Elevation Nation podcast tonight, and we are excited to have you. Matt, welcome to the show.
Guys, thanks for having me. I just want to say a heartfelt congratulations on the anniversary. It seems like just yesterday you were starting this in our apartment. So congratulations on all of the episodes, all of the work so far. It's been so great to be by your side and helping you guys reach all these listeners and reaching your goal.
I don't know, Matt. First of all, welcome to the podcast. And I don't know if you're more pissed off or pumped that you're on for episode, I think, 101. I think you're probably a little bit disappointed with Sam and myself, as it's been an entire year, and you've literally probably heard every single recording of the podcast, but you never got the chance to come on yourself. So I am sorry, but also
it's like I'm like a first time, long time. It's like this is. I feel like I've been in every episode, as you've said, but yeah, definitely, always the bridesmaid, never the bride. It's
or just the audience.
That's right. Look, it's been super fun to watch you guys grow this and watch how it's all changed. And I remember you guys sending me, messaging and stuff to read over before the podcast and really before Elevation Nation existed. And I remember the Hired You days. So, it's fun for me. I'm very happy to be here. I'm happy to talk to y'all's listeners, but I'm just happy for you guys. And it's been fun to see how much you guys have grown and changed over the past year. And definitely, being behind the scenes is where I like to be. So I'm neither pissed, but I am very pumped. So it's good to be here.
And just to add a little bit more context, and I love that you said that you've kind of been here through it all. Matt has been here through it all, and I think it's really special that we're having him on today because he really has been with us by our side through literally the whole thing, more than probably anybody else, because he's seen it through all the ups and downs. Sam's crying and anxiety, freaking out. He's seen it all, but he's also seen, obviously, the good to come from all.
What about your crying and your freaking out?
Well, he doesn't see that. JJ gets to see that now.
Wah, wah. All right.
I'm an unofficial spouse of the pod, I would say. I mean, it is true. I look, they're only highs for all of us. The lows are just lessons learned. So, and I know we'll get into that. But it has been a lot of fun, and it's fun to see you guys grow and get bigger guests. And just don't forget about us little people that were there from the very beginning when I need like a lake house rental or something,
I think you said that like a year ago when we first launched this. So
I did.
It's funny.
We're getting there.
I'm going to keep my stake in the ground.
You use the same stuff. So, Matt, obviously we've been chatting and bickering for 3 or 4 minutes here. But Elevation Nation needs to know a little bit more about who you are, where you came from. So I'll give you 30 seconds to give your elevator pitch.
Sure. My name is Matt McPartlin. I'm from just outside of Chicago, Illinois. I work here in D.C. as a political strategist and media strategist for national candidates, advocacy organizations. I help folks run for office, get issues passed in Congress, change the narrative about work they're doing. So all to say is it's a whole host of different issues and topics I work on. But definitely have been in D.C. now for a number of years and have come to know the city well and worked on a few campaigns along the way.
And I'm going to add some context to the history of Matt McPartlin. I met Matt my junior year of high school. We went to rival high schools 30 minutes away. We met at a summer camp. And within 5 minutes, this dude and I knew we were going to be close friends. We hit it off. Pretty much everyone hits it off with Matt. He's got an infectious personality, but some former guests of the podcast were the ones that really saw the birth of this awesome friendship. shout out John Camardella and David Hess as two of those inspiring figures in our lives. And it's been really fun to grow up and see what's going on with Matt's life. But I want to also provide a bit of context into your last name, Matt, which I don't know if it's exciting or it makes you uncomfortable, but the McPartlin last name, especially in D.C. and more specifically Chicago, Illinois politics, is a heavy-hitting name. He's got family in every which branch of the government doing all types of amazing things. His father, I like to say, tells some of the best stories, although now since I'm an adopted son, I feel like I've heard them now 20 times too. And it's an amazing legacy in DC politics and in Chicago politics that you have. So I think it's going to be interesting, Matt, to hear your perspective on how you felt having a legacy in politics, and then compare that to perhaps your older brother who didn't end up going in politics, and how that kind of felt to you and then the overall family as a whole that you came into politics.
Did you always want to go into politics? I think is Sam's question, or at least my question from what Sam was saying. Like when you were younger, you grew up knowing you were going to be doing any type of form of politics.
Yeah. So I'll take a step back. I think for those who don't know, both my grandfather and my great grandfather and my grandmother were huge in Chicago politics. My grandfather was a state rep in Illinois, and my grandmother was a total badass. She was a trailblazer. She was the first female to lead the union movements in Chicago in the 70s and 80s. A total badass, and who we lost a couple years ago. My father continued that legacy and went to become the director of advance for President Clinton, served in the White House all 8 years during the Clinton years, and has helped out every Democratic president since, and still does a lot of work for the administration. And so I grew up, it was an interesting upbringing. You know, my dad was traveling with the President of the United States most of the time, often even being in D.C. Monday through Friday. I'd see him on the weekends, or he'd be overseas, and so he was gone a lot. But, you know, the time we spent together at a young age was at campaign rallies or fundraisers or with candidates, or even I'd be watching the evening news and see him on TV. So as Sam kind of mentioned, I'm the middle of three, the only which of my brothers who wanted to kind of follow in what we jokingly call the family business. And as Sam mentioned, I have some cousins out here who work in public service as well. And so I think I'd always been drawn to that as a young age. I remember as a kid, like stepping on Air Force One and just being so enamored with all of it. But that desire has changed a bunch. You know, when I was a kid, I loved the vanity of it and meeting the president and seeing the Secret Service or something like that. But now I see the impact that loyal and hardworking public servants have on normal people, and how little things at different levels of government can impact lives for the better. And I think that's what makes that calling all the more noble and all the more exciting for me as I've gotten older and kind of been able to play my role in the process. So yeah, I've always wanted to do that. I remember writing in like third grade, like and I'll never forget, I had like a gifted math teacher who wrote in my yearbook, like, I can't wait to come to your inauguration, and she put like 20 blank. And it's just like, it was like, you could fill in the year, but I just have to be there. So it's always something I want. I think I was like most likely to be president in like fifth grade or something. So I was student council president. Like, I've always wanted to be in this world. And now the funny thing is, like, actually getting here as an adult, it's funny. In the conversations I have with my father, we talk every day about politics or campaigns and whatnot. It's definitely grown our relationship all the more closer.
So, Matt, bringing that statement and your story full circle, because we could spend 12 podcasts diving into your family history and life and stories, right? But I want to make sure that we have a takeaway for a lot of young people out there that are listening, trying to understand, you know, what they want to do with their lives. And I think in many of our circles and for many of our listeners, their parents were in a certain profession and went to certain schools and did certain things with their education. And while it maybe is not explicitly stated or expected, it's known and it's comfortable. And for you, you made the choice, probably not for comfort level, but you love it, to go into politics. And your brother Mike did not, and he's a teacher and a coach, and he took a different path. How can you advise some young people who are going through that kind of inner monologue saying, my family's always done this, but my passion lies elsewhere? And how do you give them the courage to either follow the path and make their own legacy, or blaze a new trail themselves and build an entirely new direction for their family name?
That's a great question. I think first and foremost, I just have to say how incredibly proud I am of both my brothers. My brother Mike is an outstanding teacher who was a horrible student, which I think makes him all the better of a teacher. And having sat in his classrooms and seeing him shape the minds of high schoolers in Chicago, it just makes me so proud. My little brother is graduating Indiana and figuring out, so he probably is listening to the podcast as well. I was very fortunate, right? My parents, you're right, it wasn't spoken, but it was always kind of there in the back burner of my father being like, well, are you going to take this on? And it just kind of lined up where I wanted to do that. I think, had I wanted to be a veterinarian or something else, that was going to be supported. But I think the biggest lesson is you have to seek out what you want. And I'm very fortunate I get the chance to mentor a lot of young people. And the thing I tell them the most, among others, is to advocate for themselves. If you see, perfect example, when I was in college, I had the chance, I was very fortunate to go intern at the White House for then Vice President Biden, but that internship didn't pay a dime. And it cost me and my family to take out loans to go. It cost us a lot of money to send a student out to DC for summer. And I was fortunate where there were a number of scholarships provided by my university, but I sought out those opportunities to get the scholarships to fund that internship for me, where it allowed me to cover the cost of housing. Other career paths are no different, right? If you want to go be a teacher or something like that, seek it out. Seek out, what you guys talk about in learning new things, whether that be in real estate or Parker, all the things you have going on, right? Seek out experts, seek out professionals, and advocate for yourself, right? If there's an internship opportunity that you find appealing, go ask for it. Ask, talk to the hiring manager, see what you can learn. And that's how you get experience in other fields. And then you figure out like, okay, maybe I do want to branch out, or maybe the opposite. Maybe you realize you want to fall back into what your family's been doing, and that's perfectly okay. It's just a matter of actually seeking out and learning. And then if either way, you still learn something. You either learned you loved it or you hated it, and that's still learning, which at the end of the day is the most important. So that's kind of, I think, is the biggest thing there.
It's win or learn. Not win or win, Sam. Win or learn. I've changed my way of doing it. You can always learn from a loss or a failure. But what's interesting is you can never learn without trying. We've talked about this plenty of times on the podcast. McP, I want to change the topic just a bit. Obviously, love talking about you and your background and the things that you've gone through. But I want to hear from you, and I'm curious, and I'm sure Elevation Nation is curious as well, as a man who has been around Washington D.C. and he sees a bunch of things that people are dealing with in the world, and the change that is made, and the campaign and rallying to get behind an issue and trying to make change in the world. What is an issue that indirectly or directly, what is an issue that young adults face that indirectly or directly affects them? Any topic. I'm curious.
Oh, man. What is it, right? As Sam said, I've been fortunate. Over the past 3 years, I've worked as one of the strategists behind the March for Our Lives movement. Essentially, it was a group of students in response to the high school shooting in Parkland, Florida, banded together amidst a national outcry to demand change and to say the status quo isn't working, and it's leading us to feel fear going into our schools. And those students were brilliant, right? They are a model for what young people should be. They saw a problem, they called bullshit, and they organized to work against it. young people today face a myriad of challenges from all different angles, right? There's economic, you look at student loan debt, there's educational crises of all sorts of things. There's a health crisis with COVID. There's just a broader, everything is not black and white. It is gray, right? Like moving forward, what is the future of work going to look like? What is the future of families going to look like? There's so many questions, I think, approaching our generation that are really hard and are not going to get solved. But I think the biggest thing, and you asked for issue, I think the biggest thing, not necessarily an issue, but is understanding the intersectionality of each issue, right? You can say, look, we have an education crisis in certain cities, and it says, okay, how did we get there? Well, then you can look at the funding of the schools. You can look at, maybe it's a transportation issue. The biggest thing I think I'm seeing affecting young people, and I think young people are actually really good at realizing this, is the connectivity of all of our other issues, right? We have a climate issue because we also have an issue in our lack of understanding of science amongst people tasked with making the decisions on climate. So that's an educational issue that's affecting our climate crisis, which will eventually affect our spending. And how our economies have been for years, right?
And our daily life.
Totally, right? That small thing, and it's heavy, right? And I wish it were as easy and like band-aidable as other things, right? Like you get a cut, you could put a Band-Aid on it, it'll heal, but that's not the case for a lot of the issues that face young people. But I will say, having worked with those students and worked with activists across the country, I'm incredibly inspired by the young people, and even what you guys are doing, right? Is you guys saw a problem and said, this isn't working. It didn't work for us. How can we prevent it for other people? I think across the country, on a variety of issues, you're seeing similar, right? You see people, as I come back to student debt, right? Protesting student debt, protesting climate, groups like the Sunrise Movement, right? A bunch of young people coming together saying our future's on the line. And that's incredibly inspiring. A lot of the older generations had a stigma around speaking out about trauma, about mental health, about marriage relationships, right? But the young people nowadays are so keen on calling out issues and accepting problems. I think is really helpful, and I do think will lead to meaningful change that'll hopefully make all of our lives better. But change is really hard, especially in DC. Congress and you look at it and all the workings and levers of power is not an easy thing. But also on the flip side of that, right? Change can start with one person. Change can start with a group of people or an idea, and the way you spread that can ladder up and make big change. So it's hard, but it is ever inspiring and ever exciting.
One of the things I kind of took away from that, Matt, and I think there are a lot of good tidbits in there, for the young people listening to this, is we kind of have to be the ones to do shit. As much as we might not want to admit it, our generation is now becoming the, not future leaders, the leaders in our companies, in our communities, in our religious, affiliations. We're now in our 20s. Not college kids anymore. We're young adults. And we're going to be the ones that are going to have to stand up for the problems that we think are important to stand up for and make a change and make a difference. And I think we're seeing more and more young people through the power of social media, even though Parker and I always say how much we hate social media. There are some good things about it, that you can unite with people around a similar rallying cause. So, I guess this is a little bit of a challenge to Elevation Nation out there. Use your self-awareness, take a step back and think, what is a cause that I care about, that I want to make a difference in, that I can use my voice and my power to make a change, and see what really kind of brings you that fire and brings you that passion, and try to find a job in that. If you can't find a job, try to find a side hustle with that. If you can't find a side hustle, try to educate yourself in that. There are lots of ways that you can still feel inspired by, the passion for change that you really want to see in the world.
And it doesn't need to be the biggest change in the entire world. Like, wow, I need to go make change so that the oceans don't overflow our cities. How about the fact that if you think that the local hot dog stand should expand to another street, yeah, you should go and do that. I know it's such a dumb and simple thing to say, but if you believe in something and you want it, you can go out and be a leader within yourself and go and make that change. You have the conversation, you educate educate other people why you think that should be the case. And I think that's what's rooted, Sam, in leadership, like we talked about last week, or I guess when this episode is going to release a few weeks ago. And I think it's rooted in democracy and government and just having people stand up for what they believe in.
That's right. I think one of the things I get asked about the most from young people who I talk with, and I try and help a lot of folks, getting to DC is hard. A lot of people want to come out here. It's expensive. You don't know what you're working on. Working on Congress and politics does not pay well. But at the end of the day, you get to go home and say, look, I pushed forward this piece of legislation, this idea. I helped this person get elected who could mean meaningful change for millions of Americans. And you're right, Parker, you hit on it, right? Is to get involved. I didn't really have a choice in getting involved. I've been around campaigns and politics since before I could remember. Shortly after I was born, my mom was by herself because my dad had to go overseas to go to a trip. And so some elected officials came and hung out with my mom. And it's like, I didn't have a choice in getting involved, but young people do, right? You have a choice in what issues you want to make your priority and where you want to spend your free time or where you want to spend a career path. And that can bring about serious, meaningful change that could not only change the communities in which you serve and live in, but also change yourself personally. I think it's a noble calling. And it's something that young people should really look at. And I think Sam's right. Social media because it makes activism available in your pocket, right? You can see something that you disagree with, or you look at like the injustices done across the country, right? One video on Twitter can reach millions of Americans by simple retweets. There are infinite ways to get involved in issues you care about. I
think,
Matt, as young
to add
people,
on to
you can
your
do
point, I think I read this article the other day. I should have sent it to you. I think you would have found it really interesting. And it was talking about the power of people under the age of 18 who actually aren't going to be legally able to vote, but yet are driving change through social media. And it's really crazy to think about that this generation, even younger than us, we really never were. I feel like we were driving change through social media, but the young people, like 12, 13, they literally can bring together a group of people and be activists around something, but yet they're not going to be able to vote, but they're going to be able to make their change and make their voices heard in a very different way.
I mean,
it's crazy.
At its core tenet, it is what democracy is, right? It is what, not to like wax poetic about the founding of our country, but it's like, it is what we were founded on, right? This idea that a group of people can get together and express dissent or express, support for ideas, and that those ideas will eventually be put into law or put into motion that can bring about change that betters the whole. It's incredibly powerful. And young people, I think, are finally realizing over the past, I would say 5 to maybe even to 10 years, how powerful they are. And you look at the things that they do, they shape the country. I mean, like you look at TikTok has shaped the country, Twitter has shaped the country.
Dude, there's like people
nation can shape a country.
There were people coming together who like help. There was another article. I got to send you this other one. It was like helping Biden win some votes in some states, like literally like 15-year-old TikTokers or whatever. I mean, it's a real thing. It's crazy.
It's how you look at it, right? And I think we were all incredibly privileged where we didn't have a lot to worry about when we were, that age. But now young people, so much of their life is they've realized, I think for the better, is being controlled by people generations older than them who have no idea about the world in which they live and operate in and the conditions that they'll face 40 years from now. And it's incredibly powerful to see them take control of their future and take control of what they want the world to be and how they want it to operate. And I think that's incredibly inspiring.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Matt, I could talk with you, and I don't know if Sam's a government nerd as much as me, but we could talk about this for a long time. I love talking about like the roots of like where America came from. I mean, on top of Hamilton, the play, like obviously there's so much more to it. But I guess
speaking of Hamilton, the play, Parker loves to try to sneak in Hamilton quotes into the podcast as Easter eggs. So Elevation Nation, DM us if you found any Hamilton Easter eggs in the podcast, because they are there.
They are there. It's just an incredible play about just the founding of our nation, and a very interesting man. But McP, we have a few more minutes left in the pod. I'm curious. Let's talk a little bit about you.
Sure.
On the Elevation Nation podcast, we talk all about self-awareness, vision, and accountability as the three main pieces and components of mental fortitude. Obviously, DC and being in the political sphere as a young 20-year-old adult is really competitive and probably really difficult at times because you really don't know what's coming next. People are obviously are voted in, voted out, whatever. Yeah. There's a lot of change. For you yourself, what's your vision for, I guess, where you want to go? And what's holding you accountable to reach that vision?
It's a great question. I think my vision changes daily on where I want to go. I think I want to be in a position. I think when I think about where I want to go, it's more of what I want to get done. I don't really care about the place. I think I want to be in a spot where I can help as many people as I can. And something I really like is working to connect our government with as many Americans as possible to bring about accessibility and an understanding of change and help drive that stuff, which is super vague. And to your second point, as a young person in DC, what holds you accountable? I think one of the greatest, I've been very fortunate to learn a lot of lessons from my father, having worked on campaigns from some of the top minds in DC. And one of my favorite rules is don't be an asshole. In this town and in the world of which we work, as in many corporate professions, word spreads quick. And that's both good and bad, right? If you work hard, and it is a meritocracy, if you work hard and you're kind and you take care of others and you look to lift up others, you will inevitably rise. Personally, I don't get people who are mean at work. I don't get, in politics, there's a lot going on. It's incredibly fast paced. There's a lot moving. But I've always tried as many places I can to mentor young people, to take care of others. Because you never know. You never know who's going to be hiring you, who you could be hiring, where everyone can end up, who runs for office. And so I've always operated just under a simple philosophy of just don't be an asshole. It's not much. It's pretty straightforward. And I find that's the best way to hold, is to hold yourself to account. And I'm very fortunate where I have a lot of friends in the political world who hold me accountable on different things.
Sure.
And that's the greatest thing.
I'm sure they hold you really accountable with their beliefs too.
Without a doubt. And I think and I read a great book not too long ago called, it was like Never Eat Alone, right? Wasn't the name of the book? Yeah. And it was talking.
Keith Ferrazzi.
Yeah, Keith Ferrazzi.
I read that one.
Who got his start in politics working for Rod Blagojevich? Fun fact. Worked alongside my father. Funny enough.
Youngest CEO in Deloitte history or something like that.
CMO. Yeah. And he talked about just surrounding himself with as many smart people and as many people with differing ideologies as possible. And I try and do that in DC. And I try and just surround myself with so many brilliant people like you guys, because I hope some of it will rub off. I'm not the smartest guy. I work really hard. I try and be kind, as I mentioned, and I just hope things go my way. And if you surround yourself with enough smart people and you just try and be in those rooms, inevitably good things will happen. And that's kind of how I've operated, and that's how I will continue to operate in this town. Because you are right, Parker. People come and go. Members get elected. Members lose elections. Presidents win elections, lose elections. The town will always change. But the work will continue to need to be done. Like, this government does not stop. And there's always issues to be done, and always things where we can improve people's lives. And by continuing to do those things, as I mentioned, people will want you around and want you working on those issues. And that's where I hope I'll be fortunate enough to be.
It's a piece of selflessness that keeps you going.
So speaking of where you want to be, Matt, Parker just hit on self-awareness. The next part of mental fortitude is vision. Where do you want to be when you look back on your career? The legacy that you want to build, I guess working backwards, kind of how are you foreshadowing what the next couple decades is going to look like for the McPartlin clan?
It's a great question. In politics, it's so hard to predict those things. I'm very fortunate, and I've seen legacies left at different levels. At the end of the day,
is it in politics?
I don't know. To be honest, I don't know, and I think that's totally okay to not know. But at the end of the day, I just want to be hopefully remembered as someone that lifted up as many people as I can. Right? There are so many people that
maybe elevate them, perhaps.
That's right. Sorry, I should have been on the messaging doc. My apologies. I forgot to read the talking points.
Dude,
beforehand.
that one was on like the freaking tee.
I know.
It was ready. It was like, dang. All you had to do was swing, and you missed.
That's right.
The tee.
I think it's about lifting as many people as possible and giving them. I was fortunate as I was making my way out here. I had a number of people bend over backwards to teach me lessons that aren't written, to introduce me to people, to show me how to do the work. And I'm trying to do that for as many people as possible. So hopefully when I retire one day, I can look back and say, look at how many people I got involved. Look how many people I helped have careers in this work. That's all I really care about. Look, I don't think you don't go into public service to be the richest man in the world. You go to make a difference. And at the end of the day, I just hope that people could say I've made one, and I hope that it's a very positive one. It's as simple as that. I don't really have much desire elsewhere. That's all I really care about. And all the other things will come with it, right? I think, there's obviously a professional vision, but the personal vision is much more important to me. And I care about helping people and getting people involved more so than anything. And wherever that is, whether it's in D.C., in Chicago, who knows?
Barbados.
Or,
Sure.
I mean, it could be
Puerto Rico.
And the good
It
Republic
may
of
not be in
Ireland.
politics. It could be in hospitality. You could be the one
Hospitality was
serving.
the first place you went?
I'm saying.
That's right. I actually came here to tease out my chain of deep dish restaurants.
Exactly. No, but Matt, you are. I mean, honestly, if you want me to be honest here, like hospitality. When I first met Sam, he was like one of the first things he said about you is like he loves to host and
I do.
like give people a good time.
And that
make
came
sure
from
that they're
Farazi's
enjoying-
book. That came 100% from that book. One of the things
Parents, you don't want to give them a shot.
they were good hosts. They did
So
teach me
when
a
you
lot.
laugh at hospitality is like the second thing
They did.
behind politics. I mean, no doubt in my mind, you just want to be in a position where you can help others feel better about their position, whatever they are. Whether it's when they come over and hang out for an evening, you're putting together a nice dinner and a nice whiskey and a nice looking glass with a spherical ice cube and whatnot, or whether it's actually doing public service and making the world a better place and pushing policy to better the world we live in.
You're exactly right. I think one of my favorite Hamilton songs is The Room Where It Happens, right? In DC and in life, there are many rooms, whether that be in a boardroom, whether that be just a dinner table with friends, where those conversations that lead to growth really do happen, right? Whether that be professional growth or personal growth, right? I think for me, if you talk about hospitality, right, I care the most about not what's discussed, but how many people are in the room and who those people are, right? I want to expand the conversation to as many people as possible, whether that be in government, whether that be in public service, whether that be just getting involved in campaigns and politics. And I think that's what I care the most about, right? Is those rooms do exist, right? But not everyone has a fair shot in getting into them. whether that be they're too young, they don't have the experience that people perceive to be necessary, they don't have the equal opportunity. I think for me, as someone who is fortunate to be born into a lot of this work, expanding that and being as inclusive as possible leads to the most good. And so I try and do that as much as I can.
Love it.
But it's also the best song on the album. I mean, the whole soundtrack is electric,
but
but the room where it happens is, without a doubt, the best song on the album.
I feel like you're really not a true Hamilton fan if your favorite Hamilton song doesn't change every month.
It does. My second favorite is, what's it called? Oh, my God.
We're going to have to edit it. Hold on.
Why is it called? It's like, why? It's the writing one. So you're running out of time. Like, you're running out of time. Oh my God! Pull up the soundtrack. It's gonna kill me. I was doing so good at having no areas where we needed to cut. Nonstop. Oh my God!
No, that one's good.
Forget. Nonstop is electric.
They're all great. I really like Skylar Sisters lately. That one's really good.
You like Skylar Sisters?
It's because he moved to New York and they walk around New York. I did the same thing.
No, it's great. There's just so much in there that's so good. All right, Matt, we're gonna shoot you some fastballs here. You ready? And then we're gonna finish this conversation
just
up.
The thought of you walking downtown New York listening to Skylar Sisters is so
well,
funny.
Oh my gosh. You should hear some of the songs that go on. It's either that or like death metal when I'm walking down like 4th Ave. I'm not even kidding. I'm literally not even kidding. All right, Matt. Let's see. What is your favorite type of pizza that isn't deep dish pizza?
This is also so easy.
It is?
I'm answering for Matt. I'm honestly disappointed. Yes, I am.
Sam,
Matt makes the best freaking pizza ever. Matt's pizza is better than any place besides
No. Matt, I need a specific kind of pizza.
I will say, I love. Sam's right. I do make a lot of great pizza. DC has shown me the benefits of hot honey, so I would say like a nice pepperoni and hot honey is one of my favorites right now. It changes though.
What kind of style?
Oh, I'm a Chicago guy through and through. I like a nice thick square.
You can't
cut.
say Chicago here.
No, I didn't say deep dish. I just said thick crust.
Oh, okay, thick crust. Got it.
Yeah, thick pepperoni, hot honey.
All right, Sam. Let's hear your question.
So Matt also equally likes to read like I do, hence the bookshelf behind me. Matt, what is your favorite book of all time?
The one I liked. I read a great book a few months ago on my own Irish history, but I think my favorite book of all time is The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. I buy it for so many people. I think it's a really important mindset.
You bought it for me. Or did you buy it for me?
I bought it for you.
I can't remember which one you bought it for me.
It takes a lot of, and I think it's very similar to how I operate. It takes a lot of common writings about self-experience and growth, and kind of flips it on its head. So that's without a doubt probably my favorite book I've read so far.
It's a good one. Honestly, I feel like it's a very cliche young person like self-help book, but it's really good too. Like 100% recommend it. Mark Manson, the writer, is actually really, really brilliant. Like, he's a smart ass guy. All right, Matt, I got another question for you. Another fastball. Hope you don't swing and miss. I know you swung and missed when I put it on the tee earlier. So, what is to you the most interesting country in the world that isn't the United States, and why? And you're not allowed to say Ireland either.
I'm really getting limited.
Yeah. I mean, there's only like a couple hundred.
You have 190 left. What do you got?
Favorite? You say most interesting?
What is the most, like, what's a country that's just on your mind lately that's just really intriguing you?
I find Vietnam to be wildly interesting. Ever since I watched the Bourdain episode where he went to Vietnam, I've always wanted to go. I find it to be so interesting that they're so welcoming of Americans after all that we've put that country through. And it's something that has always interested me is their level of not necessarily forgiveness, but understanding of the conflict and the war we put that country through and all of the damage we did, but yet are so welcoming and so excited to teach us their history. I find that to be interesting, and Vietnam looks to be one of the most beautiful places in the world. I just think, there's so much I want to see in that country, and I really want to get over there, that Vietnam is something that I've always been really interested in.
All right, Vietnam story. Thank you, Matt, for setting that up.
Jesus Christ.
Oh, Parker's rolling his eyes. Parker, since when do you not like stories on the podcast?
No, I love stories. I was just going to say...
Are you nervous where I'm going to take this one?
What, me shitting myself for a day? Day straight? Montezuma's revenge in Vietnam?
No, that was not where I was going to go. No, but Parker, myself, Noah Schiff, and Miles Grossman went to Vietnam. Matt is absolutely correct. We learned a lot that they don't tell you about the Vietnam War from a different perspective. We saw the guerrilla warfare tunnels that they used to kill American soldiers, which was fascinating. I shot my first gun in the jungle, but more importantly, Parker got really sick, so that was really important as well.
No. I think the most interesting part of Vietnam was the amount of scooters that were on the road.
God.
There were so many people riding scooters.
I'm a huge scooter guy.
No, Matt. There were so many freaking scooters that people had to ride on the sidewalk. And because they were riding on the sidewalk, where do you put the people who have to walk on the sidewalk? It was just absolutely...
You put them on scooters.
I guess so. I mean, I saw 4 people on one scooter once. It's a fascinating place. I love the answer. All right, Matt. We've talked obviously, about your experiences, self-awareness, vision, accountability. What you see for your life now, where it's going to go, and the advice that you have for young adults who are going through a similar or maybe not similar position, but are just starting out in the real world and just want to make a difference in the world. So, Sam and I ask on the Elevation Nation podcast this one question, and I'm sure you know it. We've talked about this with you many, many times, and you've probably heard about it more times than you probably want to.
So you better have thought of a good answer, because you've only had 100 episodes to think about this.
Exactly. So, Matt, what does mental fortitude mean to you?
It's so funny because I remember you guys, like, when we first workshopped the idea of mental fortitude. I forgot what you called it beforehand. There was a before time.
I think it was just fortitude.
I think it was fortitude.
It was just.
I remember
one
like the
word.
pre notion of the compass, and oh my god, that was like right as COVID started too. Oh my god.
One step up, one step right, one step back, one step left.
Luckily,
that was great.
Me and Parker know about what that is.
It's a great question. It is like the $1 million question. I think, and this, I don't want to give a cop-out answer. There's so much pressure. I think, look, I had talked to Sam about this earlier today, about the idea of little victories. And it's something I preach a lot, right? And this is like a little bit of Mark Manson's book too, is like, people are going to let you down. Opportunities are going to come that you will miss. Opportunities will come that you won't even get considered for, right? There are things in life and in a working world and getting used to the real world that are not going to go your way, and that's inherent. Mental fortitude is the response to that, right? It is the response to when things are not going your way, to when you get passed over for opportunities, when a campaign loses. I remember working for Hillary Clinton in 2016, and we came in second place, and second place does not get you the presidency in the United States. There are things that the young people, people won't respond to your emails. People don't give a shit. They won't call you back from interviews you did. Mental fortitude is what you make it. It is the lessons you learn from failure. It is the lessons you learn from winning, and improving yourself, and the growth, the cumulative growth you have from all of your experiences are what make you stronger. As I said, I think we talked about it too. I've been very lucky to work on a lot of things that have been really exciting. I've won campaigns, I've lost campaigns, I've won issues, I've lost issues. I've been very frustrated. I've been very happy through the work that I've done. The mental fortitude is everything else you've learned along the way, right? It is the scars, it is the battle armor that comes with the losses, the wins, the learnings from people who have done it before, the missteps from ignorance, the missteps from inexperience. How you respond is guided by that mental fortitude, and so that's what I think it's all about. It's not necessarily the what. It's more the who you are and where you've been, and what you're going to do. That is mental fortitude.
I think that was beautifully said.
Shit,
It's a wonderful answer. And Matt, I think, for our 101st episode, the concept of little wins, little victories with mental fortitude and turning those into, Parker, I can't believe I'm going to say it, in your favorite freaking phrase, a win-win scenario is really how you can exude mental fortitude. Life's unfair. It is. Sorry if you haven't heard that before, if I'm the first to tell you. Life's unfair. How are you going to respond? Are you going to turn it into a win? Are you going to learn from it? Is it going to be a tiny victory somehow, some way? Or are you going to lay down, roll over, and cry about it? The option is yours, but life doesn't care, and it's unfair.
I don't know. I agree with you saying. Like, yeah, that's like always what people say. Like, life is unfair. Like, oh, like there's always things that kind of come up that you don't want to happen. But yeah, but like, also, life is in somewhat, capacity fair. It is. I mean, we're here.
Elaborate, because I disagree.
Go
ahead.
We're living. We're loving. We're talking. We are. When I mean, if we want to really go deep into this here, I mean, just the concept of being, living, and alive is a fucking miracle. So you're telling me that that's not fair?
I mean, that has nothing to do with being fair or not. That's being grateful. But I don't think you did anything to earn that. You didn't do shit to earn your life. You're just alive. Is that fair or unfair?
I get that. I think that's... Ooh, that's a deep question. Fair or unfair? I don't know if I can say it's unfair.
Well, Parker, I'm going to challenge you. Let's table this debate for this week's episode of Fortitude and 15.
I think
I'm going to give you time to prepare.
Oh, it's going
I say life's unfair.
Bro.
You say life is fair.
Well, no, I said it with a caveat.
Even with your caveat, I still take Sam's argument. I think he's 100% right. Life is inherently unfair. Here's
what I'm saying
case,
is
childhood
I understand
cancer.
what you're
Childhood
saying.
cancer.
I understand what you're saying. Obviously, I think life is. Oh, there's times where life is not fair. Yes, of course, but there's also times where you can find the little things in life that make it like, wow, I'm here, I'm doing amazing things, and
say life.
This is fair.
That's a gratefulness. That's like a gratefulness. I think, and I don't want this to be in the episode, but I think
no. This is.
I actually thought it ended in a really good place, guys.
No. This is after
so
this.
much
This
fun.
is not part of it.
I think like to the fair unfair part, right? Like hurricanes. How are hurricanes fair? How is fucking Hurricane Katrina fair to people who were born in New Orleans and couldn't leave because their family had no money? How is that fair? Right? There's a great question, right? Catholics believe that God can intervene, right? We pray, like if Sam were to have cancer, I would pray to, God forbid, I would pray to the good Lord above, right? To heal Sam. It's the hardest thing is to intervene, right? That intervention. But if you believe, then maybe that's the hardest question at all, is right? It's like, what if it's the harder thought is to, Sam's right. The harder thought is to accept that things are naturally unfair. That if things were fair, then you're forever seeking your return. If you get an unfair thing to happen to you, you're like, you gotta cash out and it's gotta come back to even. But what if it doesn't? I couldn't disagree with you more, Parker.
I understand what you're saying, and this is where I'm going to get really deep about this. And I understand, life isn't unfair. I understand that aspect, but the concept of fair and unfair, I mean, if we're getting really philosophical about this, is a human thought, right? It is. It's like an animal doesn't walk around thinking their life is fair or unfair. It's just being. It's just there.
So how does this?
Okay.
Okay, I'm just saying, like, this is me being very philosophical about this. Like, the world just does, and we're just here, and that's just that,
And I think that kind of goes back to my point then, Parker, right? Like, everything's kind of just happening. Whether you earned it, deserved it, or not, things are going to happen to you. Good, bad, awesome, lucky, grateful, unlucky.
Shit, horrid.
The earth is spinning, right? And so
there's times where it's fair, and then there's times when it's unfair.
Listen,
I think sure you can earn things yourself. I'm not saying that it's just luck of the draw in life.
Explain to me the newborn. My case study. Explain to me the newborn who gets childhood cancer. How is that fair?
That is not fair. That sucks.
So inherently, right, on behalf of people, that would be inherently unfair for that person, right? If that were the child, their whole life would essentially. Sam,
but what I'm saying is, what'd you say?
Sam was being so loud.
What I'm saying is that, like
Niagara Falls.
When we go around and we're just saying life is unfair, like, we're implying that we all have it unfairly. What I'm saying is we all don't know if people wake up every day and they're like, wow, I'm very happy with where I am right now, and life actually isn't unfair.
I would say...
You see what I mean? Do you see what I'm saying?
I do. I would say for the three of us, we're very fortunate. We would say life's pretty fair. We've been very fortunate with a lot of things.
I see what you're saying with that. But what about the person who in the 1920s or 1930s escaped Nazi Germany, whatever, and comes over to America, and they got a chance to live and rebuild their life in a place that was amazing.
The same, I think you're using unfair
that they had to leave, but it's fair that they had the opportunity to come to a place like.
What America. I think you're using unfair in a negative connotation. In a different example of unfair. You know what else is unfair? Like, whoever gets to be like Elon Musk's kid, right, is born to Earth having done zero in life, and your inherent net worth is I don't know how much he's worth these days, but billions of dollars.
You're defining unfairness for where
because
you
life
come
is unfair.
From. Your unfairness could be totally different than someone else's unfairness.
But at the end of the day, it is unfair.
I see what you're saying. Listen, I understand what the point is. I just wanted to spark this conversation. I don't know why, but
I don't know why either.
No, I think it's fun to have these types of conversations.
I do too.
I think it's listen, at the end of the day, I don't know. Shit sucks. So, there's a lot of
podcast
things that go
question.
on.
What happens next? You take that.
Wait. We do need to hold on. I do need to finish the episode real quick because we did not.
Do I need to do something?
No.
Yeah, just say thank you when Parker's.
No, I got it. Matt, it was a pleasure to have you on. It was so fun to have a conversation with you. Obviously, a long time coming, or maybe not. Maybe you were never expecting to come on, and maybe we were just like, you know what, we're gonna make Matt's day and have him on the podcast. But dude, it's been a pleasure. You're absolutely crushing it. You're doing amazing things. You're making people, honestly, you're making a difference in the world, and I know you really value that, but from the people around you, I'm sure they also value that so much as well. So it doesn't go unnoticed, and we are so happy that we were able to share your story with our guests on the podcast. So can't say enough.
Likewise, guys, thank you so much for having me on. As I said at the beginning, I'm so proud of you guys and the growth and all of the work you've put into this. And the growing nation of supporters and eager learners. It's been such a pleasure to talk with you both, and I can't wait to be your biggest fan behind the scenes once again. So thanks again, guys, for having me on.
And until next week, Elevation Nation, peace.